Hello, and welcome to my knitting podcast. So if you're new to my channel, Hannah Catherine Knits, this is probably the first podcast episode you've ever watched. If you are not new, you might have come from my main channel, which is just Hannah Catherine. I made a decision a little while ago to branch off and do a separate channel with just knitting content because just if you know anything about the YouTube algorithm and how it recommends videos to people, essentially it works better if your channel is more specifically about one topic. So I decided it would probably be advantageous if I did one channel just for all of my knitting or yarn or crochet content. It's mostly going to be knitting because that's mostly what I do, but I wanted something that was just specific to that craft. If you are interested, my other channel, my main channel, is just called Hannah Catherine, and it's still a variety of topics, but it's mostly sewing or any sort of craft to do with fabric, just other random topics here and there, whatever craft I really get myself into. But I knit enough that I felt like I would really have enough content to do an entire channel of knitting stuff. So if you're here, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm not going to be talking about every project I have as a work in progress right now because it's a lot. I'm just going to kind of talk about what I've been focusing on, especially because a lot of it is summer knits. So I wanted to just kind of showcase what I've been knitting over the summer. So I do have one finished object. This one will be a surprise to all though, because I haven't talked about it at all because it's a gift I was making for someone. So my brother and sister-in-law just had their second child and I had made a blanket for her older sister. And so I wanted to make a blanket for her and I just finished it. It is post the date of her birth, but you know what? It's fine. It's summer, so it's not like you need a blanket right now. So maybe it'll just be like a wintertime blanket. But I didn't want to mention it all. Sometimes they talk about watching my videos, so I wanted to make sure I was not giving anything away. But I just finished it. I used 100% acrylic yarn. I don't make a lot of my own garments out of acrylic just because I enjoy the feel of wool. But I also know that wool is kind of a chore. You're giving someone a little bit of a headache when it comes to laundering it because you really need to hand wash it. Even superwash stuff, I think it just looks better over time if you hand wash it. So I typically kind of veer away from giving people wool garments, especially when I have, it's like premium acrylic, I believe it's Lion Brand premium acrylic, that feels really fantastic and I have no qualms with. It's just heavier than what I'd wear, but I think it's good for a blanket. So I decided to go kind of the more pastel route. I found this really pretty stitch. I believe it's called a waffle stitch. I'm not a crocheter by trade. I watched a 5-minute tutorial on how to make this stitch and then I just made this whole blanket. So I picked 3 different colors as you can see, but it's essentially supposed to mimic the look of like waffle print fabric that has that texture in it. And I really like how it turned out, but definitely going with kind of the calmer colors here. I'm trying to see if I can get all of this in here. I think that's the whole thing. But I really love how it turned out and I washed it and laid it outside so it like kind of smells like outdoors now. So I'm really pleased with it. Hopefully they really like it. I think it turned out well and I was really scared. This cream was a leftover that I have probably 10 feet of yarn left. So I won a game of yarn chicken on this. But I was very pleased to get this done and hopefully they will like it. And that's probably all I'm gonna crochet for like the entire year because every time I crochet, it's probably been 6 months since the last time I crochet. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I haven't crocheted in forever. I wanna crochet again. And then I crochet and I'm like, I don't like this. I first learned knitting and I know that that's always like the cardinal rule is that you like what you learned first. And I can say 100% that is true for me. I like knitting the most. I like crochet sometimes. It's kind of nice to get a break from knitting, but every time I do it, I'm just reminded that I don't do it enough to be able to pick up and do it for hours at a time like I do knitting because I do not have that muscle memory built into my wrist. Like, oh man, my wrist hurts for like days after I crochet. So I probably won't be crocheting anything again for a while, but I did really enjoy this project. It was a good opportunity to kind of learn some new crochet techniques and I think it turned out really lovely. What I'm wearing today is actually a summer knit that I finished this year. It is 100% cotton tee. I finished it probably about a month ago, and I have worn it so many times. I really, really like it. I would say it feels a little bit heavier than just like a regular cotton t-shirt, but not by a lot. This is just really my own self-drafted pattern. I basically followed the shape of a t-shirt that I already own. The sleeves are not perfect, I'll be honest. If you are new here, I will tell you, I do not follow patterns. I really just get a lot of enjoyment out of coming up with my own ideas, and that's the way that I find the most motivation and inspiration to knit, is by just totally drafting my own stuff. I will, depending on the object, follow a pattern, specifically, which we'll talk about today, like socks or highly technical pieces. A lot of times I follow patterns just as a way to learn new techniques and things, but I really enjoy drafting my own patterns. This sleeve, I did short row shaping for the essentially the shoulder caps, and on the first sleeve it worked out really well, and I was like, wow, this is going so perfectly. But I didn't write anything down. And so then when I got to the second sleeve, I couldn't remember how many stitches I was doing each row or how long it was until it increased by a certain amount. Like, it was a mess. I am gonna just be honest and tell you, I redid the second sleeve 3 times before. They're almost similar. I don't think they visually look different, which is why I was like not worried about redoing them again, but the one is slightly more stitches than the other one. I think it's like about 6 stitches more, so it's just enough that I can kind of notice if I look for it, but it's fine. I've already worn it a ton and I really, really liked it. This is a yarn that I actually got from Joann Fabrics. It's called K&C and it stands for Knit and Crochet, but it is 100% cotton. It's a fingering weight and I've really had good experiences with it. I feel like it is just light enough that it doesn't feel too bulky. That's kind of my biggest complaint with a lot of cotton yarns. I feel like they're too thick, they're too bulky, they're like DK weight. So I've really loved how lightweight this is, and it's just so comfortable and cool, and I really love it. So that's what I have on today. And I wanted to talk about, I think I've got like 4 projects going right now that I have been working on semi-regularly, depending on what it is and depending on how much I felt like picking it up. So I'm just gonna start like oldest project to newest, not necessarily what I've worked on the most. I believe the oldest one is the sweater that I have been making. I have been calling this my mermaid sweater just based on the colors because they remind me so much of a mermaid. This is hand-dyed yarn from the dyer on Instagram called Ruby and Roses. She is based in Indiana and she's fantastic. This is a discontinued color from a couple years ago called Princess Tail, and I've had it forever, so I finally decided to cast it on. It is a fingering weight yarn, and this is just a self-drafted pattern. I am doing bottom up, and I'm alternating skeins, so I didn't want any sort of color pooling. I wanted it to just be a really lovely, like marled color all mixed together really nicely. When I do bottom up, just like split for sleeves, so right there is where I split. I like to go up kind of what I consider the back section first, just because that's going to be more, you have to knit the back a little bit higher than you knit the front. So it feels like I get the bigger portion out of the way first. So then when all you have left is the front, it goes really fast. So I've just been working on the back. I haven't got a ton done since the last time I filmed. So this is the entirety of how much I've knit up the back. I put this little marker here last time I filmed. So I've knit like an inch. Isn't a lot, but it is fingering weight. So it isn't like it takes a while to knit an inch. So I'm making progress. It's slow progress. I haven't been super inspired because just knitting with wool in summertime is never very appealing to me. Like it's just hot. I don't really want to touch that necessarily. So that is how far I've gotten on that one. Not very exciting, I know. Now I think the next oldest, just based on how long I've been like planning and swatching for this project, is the alpaca sweater that I've been making that I still haven't quite decided what I want to call it. But it is a self-designed cable knit sweater. I've wanted to make a cable knit for a long time just because I've played around with cables here and there and I'm feeling confident enough to do like a large scale project. It has like been the definition of a labor of love though. It is mental work. So I pulled different stitch patterns, cable knit stitch patterns out of the Japanese Knitting Stitch Bible, and then also my Knit Stitch dictionary. So I'm pulling from 2 different books, and then I have like 2 different patterns in the Japanese Knitting Stitch Bible that I'm pulling from, so I'm flipping back and forth. I've also got a notebook that I sketched out like my entire design, just so I had exactly correct in my mind how many stitches all the way across the front. So I decided to do this as a seamed garment. That way I'm not worrying about being in the round. I can just do one section at a time. You know, I don't have to do the front and the back, try and space all that out correctly. So right now I'm calling this the front for now. If I make a mistake, it's gonna be the back. I haven't got a ton done. I actually don't even know if I put a marker on this because, oh no, I did. Yeah, I haven't got very much done. Oh my gosh, it's going everywhere. Okay, here we go. So I'm doing this one bottom up, and this is how far I've gotten. I'm incredibly proud of it. I love it, and I'm super happy with what it's turning out as. It is just so time consuming. So I am using 3 different strands of yarn for this. I've got them, I don't know if this is like a hack or what, but usually when I have multiple skeins, they're just tumbling about in a bag and it's kind of a mess. Well, I knew I couldn't do that because one of the strands here is a sweater I took apart, and it's pretty thin and it'll break pretty easily. So I decided like I needed a different method. So I have them on this little tray so that they just stay seated there all the time, and then when I'm done, I just put the knitting project on top of it, and there's my knitting project. So these aren't a bag, which is kind of different than most of my stuff, but it's just a way to keep them from getting massively tangled. The yarns that I'm using, so yeah, this one right here, if you can tell how thin that is, this is what I unwound off of a 100% cashmere sweater that I found at a thrift store for $2, I might add. This is kind of the star of the show here. This is 100% alpaca. I got this at a wool festival that I went to last September, and I usually do not go for beige at all, ever. It's just a color I'm never drawn to. Look behind me. You can see the bright colors. I love color. And I saw this there and just couldn't stop thinking about it. I walked away and came back. So I just felt like it was meant to be, and I just love it. It's so soft. You can see it's got a little bit of hairiness to it, but in a way that honestly feels fantastic. And then actually also at the wool festival, I got some Surrey alpaca. This is just undyed Surrey to give it a little extra fuzziness. And then it all comes together to make this beautiful, just like barely creamy color. I think they just all mix really, really beautifully. So that is what I've been using for that. It is fun to knit, but I also can't do anything else. You know, it's not a mindless knit by far, because the whole way across I'm counting, because there's certain stitches you have to do on the front and the back. I made my first ever bobbles for this sweater. I think I mentioned this in the last video, but I was really proud of those. I had never knit a bobble before, and let me just say, it's a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be. So I'm really, really pleased with this one. Like I said, I have not worked on it a lot, but maybe, we'll see. I have a lot of seasonal knits that I'm working on that I've been excited about and have gotten a lot more done on. Next up is what I've called my key lime dress, and this one I've actually gotten a lot done on. So this is another self-drafted pattern. This is also one I started 3 times before I decided exactly how I wanted it to look, and it's coming along pretty nicely. I finished my first skein of yarn, so I'm on to number 2. This yarn is also this yarn. So this is the K&C 100% cotton fingering weight. This color, I think it's called Lemon Lime. Really like this yarn, and this is the first garment that I ever drafted myself that I'm knitting top down, because all I could think about was that I was worried about running out of yarn, and because I usually do bottom up, you just kind of have to guess about how long your yarn is gonna go to know like what length to make garments before you like split for sleeves or start shaping. You know, for this I did like some decreases for the waist, things like that. You just kind of have to make an educated guess. So the benefit of doing top down, especially in a situation where I really wasn't sure how far my yarn was going to go, is that I can just knit until I run out of yarn, and then that's the bottom of the dress. So that's beneficial. That way I don't have anything left over, and I don't run out because I don't have anything that matches this. So here's the top of it. I have already kind of done the edging for the top because I didn't want it to be like a super tight neckline. I actually just did a single crochet row around the top to kind of fortify it, make it look finished. And I've got the armholes done, and it's kind of hard to tell. The needles it's on are too small, so they're like really bunched up. And I don't know why I put my progress keeper in the back, but whatever. I've gotten quite a bit done on this one. So this is where I last showed where I was at, my little disco ball charm. And I've gotten probably 6 or 7 inches knit up since then. I've been doing increases on the sides, which I knit a dress last summer, and that was kind of my issue, was increases that I did not, actually I knit that one bottom up so it was decreases, but essentially I didn't decrease fast enough, and then it kind of bulged out a little bit weird at the sides. So I've been trying to space it out a little bit more. Essentially I put stitch markers along the sides. If you kind of picture your body as like a rectangle, I put them at all 4 corners. That's kind of how I decided to space them out. And then I've been doing increases, depending on where I'm at. Like I'll do a row and increase at all 4 corners. And then I've been getting really close to, kind of close to the hip area. So I've been increasing pretty quickly just to make sure I'm kind of fitting that. I want this to be a really loose fit, casual summer dress. So I've been doing like 2 rows of knitting and then an increase row, and 2 rows of knitting and increase row. So I'm increasing 8 stitches every 4 rows, which is a decent amount. And that's kind of what I was looking for. And I think that's gonna help it even out a lot better. So that's where I'm at. It is making a lovely fabric. I really wanted this to be just a comfy, drapey dress. I did find a couple knit dresses online that I thought were really cute, and they were made with linen, and I thought I need to make this cotton, that drapiness. And I think it's got a really lovely drape to it. So I'm really excited about where this is going, and I think it'll be a really lovely standalone piece just because of how bright it is. And it's kind of doing an interesting little color pooling. I do not hate it. So I'm interested to see what the final product looks like, just as I like increase or decrease or whatever. It is doing some interesting little shapes and whatnot. So that's where I'm at with this dress. Now, the last 2 projects I have here, I don't remember which one I started first, so I'm just gonna talk about the one you maybe already know about. If you follow me on Instagram, I've posted about this a little bit, and I might have talked about it in my last video. I don't remember. But last year, I finished a sweater that was made out of neon yarn. I called it my Neon Dream Sweater, and it's probably the best fitting garment I've ever made. I love it. It's all out of fingering weight yarn, and I actually had quite a bit left over. So I had 1 skein of all the colors and then an extra of the pink because I knew I wanted to do trim and stuff in pink. And so when I was done, I still had an entire skein I hadn't even touched of pink and about like 30-ish grams of everything else left. And I thought, what about a matching pair of socks? So I started on these maybe a little over a month ago, and I just essentially wanted them to match the sweater perfectly. And I worked on these on my recent vacation, and I got pretty much an entire sock done just in that time period. I had knit like 5 rows into the cuff when we left, and I was sewing the toe up on the way home. So I pretty much knit this entire sock on vacation, and I love it. I think it is so cute, and probably one of the better socks that I've knit. This is pair number 6, I think. I just knit my first pair in December, so I'm still learning what I'm doing here. This I do use a pattern for. I follow patents. I have a little booklet that is just some basic sock patterns. This is just their basic sock in fingering weight. I do alter it because they recommend a size 2 needle, but I just really like a tight knit sock because I think that they hold up a lot longer if they are more tight knit. So I'm actually using a size 0 needle, and I really like it. I think it creates a really nice dense fabric that is gonna last for a long time, or I hope it lasts for a long time. But that's like one layer of it. You definitely cannot see through it whatsoever. So I really like it for that, but I do have to alter it a little bit. I added some stitches to it, and I actually think in the future I'll probably add a few more just for a little bit of comfort, especially around like the leg and calf area. There's not as much stretch as there probably would be if I was using a bigger needle. But I got this done. Like I said, I was in the car stitching it up, And unfortunately, I think I was in a situation where I just wasn't able to try it on as much as I should have, and they are a little too small. The foot could be like a quarter of an inch longer and it would be perfect. So I was really bummed about that because I just spent so much time on this and I can't even wear it. It's just slightly uncomfortable, you know, it's just a little too short. And so I went over to my friend's house. She also loves bright colors and I brought it with me and I said, try this on, because she wears like a shoe size and a half, maybe 2 sizes smaller than me. And she put it on, she was like, oh my gosh, these feel amazing. So I was like, okay, so they're gonna be yours when they're done if you want them. So they became my friend's socks, which is totally fine because honestly, I kind of overestimated how much yarn these were even gonna use. Like, I don't know why though. You know, if you count each one, I'm only doing 4 stripes of each color and it's only like 72 stitches around. That's not that much yarn. I can't even tell a difference in my skeins. I'm sure when I weigh them, they'll be lower, but I'm not using the majority by far in them. So I think I will still have plenty to make another pair for myself. But I've got the first sock done. I started the first sock actually on vacation as well. And I just finished the heel turn yesterday and I'm just working on the next couple of stitches. It's kind of bunched up here, you know, because I've got a lot of extra because I'm working on like the instep shaping right now, but it's going swimmingly. So I'm really enjoying it. The only thing that I don't like about this pair is this was the very end of the first skein of pink and this is the beginning of the second, or this is off the second one. The beginning of the second one would have been this stripe, but you can tell that those are pretty different shades of pink, but I don't think anyone else is gonna notice. So I'm not super worried about it, but I'm really loving them. And also, assuming I'll have enough for both of our socks, I'll have matching socks with my best friend. So that'll be really fun and cute. I expect to have these probably done by the next video, maybe. I feel like this is the home stretch now. You know, I'm past the heel. I hate the heel flap. I've been using these 9-inch circulars, which I love them. They're so beautifully convenient. They're so small, they're so perfect. Anytime we get in the car, I have a sock with me because they're so easy to knit in the car. But doing the heel flap, especially having to purl on the backside, oh, it's so tedious. I cannot stand it. So once I get past that part, I can just like fly through. It's a breeze after that. On the line of socks, I wanted to talk about an acquisition that I did make. It's not yarn though, it is a book that I purchased. Now, if you're a longtime viewer and you remember probably like my first or second video I ever posted, I mentioned I'm not a sock knitter. I don't like knitting socks. You know, I think that they're just so small and tedious and socks get ruined so fast. Like I don't want to walk on something I spent so many hours making. Well, I'd like to formally say I'm gonna eat my words because I really like knitting socks. They're just so fun and fast and they are great gift ideas. I'm already coming up in my mind with what I can make people for Christmas, what kind of socks or slippers I can make people for Christmas because they're so fast and easy. And as long as you know like a rough estimation of somebody's shoe size, they're probably gonna fit well. So it's just perfect. So I went to Barnes & Noble a couple weeks ago with some friends and I was looking through their knitting book section because I always do. And I found this book, which I've actually seen advertised online before. I've seen people post about it, that they really like it, this 52 weeks of socks. And I looked through it and it sounded really fun. So I bought it, obviously. Also, because it was like $25, yeah, $25 before tax, which means you're paying like 50 cents a sock pattern. Like that's such a good deal. So I decided to go full force in with it. All the socks that I've knit have just been off at Patton's Basic Socks. And I thought, you know what, it's time to branch out. I just don't feel comfortable knitting socks without a pattern though. And I've talked about before, because I do a lot of sewing, I think that makes me so comfortable to just knit an entire garment and not worry about following a pattern because I sew shirts, I sew dresses, I sew long sleeve shirts, whatever. And I think that a lot of that knowledge of what pattern pieces looks like just transfers over pretty easily to where I feel really comfortable just knitting garments and knowing that they're probably going to be about the right shape, the right size. Socks though is not something I had any experience with. So it's something that I do feel a lot more comfortable working using a pattern. I also felt like most, if not all of these, I don't feel like there's any socks in here that I would say like, oh, this is like a pretty basic pattern. And so I'm pretty confident that with every single one of them, I'm probably going to be really learning some new techniques, which is exciting. And really, I would say probably the best benefit of patterns is just kind of sharing knowledge with people and learning new stitches and seaming techniques, whatever it may be. That's kind of the best thing that I typically glean from patterns. So I am excited about this. I'm gonna definitely finish the pair that I'm on. I really would like to just go ahead and make another pair that looks just like that for myself, and then maybe work on a pair from here. We shall see. And the last current project that I wanted to talk about is a little bit of an impulse project. It's not one that I've talked about at all, but I definitely got in a mood when it came to working on summer projects. And I have had this linen yarn, honestly, forever. This is this little ball that I have left of it right now, but this is from Darn Good Yarn. It is 100% linen. I think it's just called burgundy, or it's maybe like cherry wine or something color, but it's a really lovely burgundy and honestly kind of reminds me of wine, which is why I'm calling this my vineyard top, because this is also from my Knit Stitch dictionary. I wanted to try out a lace stitch pattern. I have done swatches of lace before and been like, I hate this, because just the yarn overs always throw me off. I don't know why. And I actually will say, I think I was really overthinking it, but I tried to knit one of the simpler lace patterns in my Japanese Knitting Stitch Bible. And if you have one, or if you've seen those before, they're all charted. It's not like a list of instructions. It's just a chart that you read, which can be really helpful. But oh my gosh, it was really confusing me, because I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, it has me yarn over, but does that count as a stitch? Do I read the next box then? Do I count this in my stitch count? Like, I think I was just really overthinking it. I was getting overwhelmed. So I was like, I need something easier. So I went to the Knitting Stitch Dictionary, which has a lot of like basic stitches in it. And I looked through all their lace stitches and I found this one. It doesn't look amazing because it's not been washed and blocked. It'll definitely look better when it is, but it is a leaf shape, a leaf pattern. If you can kind of tell, it might be hard to see. It's definitely gonna look better once it's blocked, but I just really loved it. I did a swatch of it and I thought it looked so pretty. That's also why I knew it would look good, is because I washed my swatch, which I never do. So I was really proud of myself. I did a wet block and everything, but I really, really liked it. And so I wanted to make just a kind of linen tank top out of this essentially. I only have 250 grams of this linen, which sounds like a lot. It kind of is, but this is already my second skein and I'm not done with the front yet. I'm gonna be seaming them together. So I know I'm gonna have some left over. I'll probably have a whole 50 gram skein left over. I really liked working with it. I know a lot of people talk about linen can be hard on your hands and kind of hurt over time to knit with. I have experienced that, but only when I've knit for like 2 hours on it. It is pretty time consuming. I am using a size 2 needle, so it's going moderately slow, but I'm actually really enjoying it. It is simple enough that I can do it kind of mindlessly, but it's also challenging enough that I'm not bored with it. It's not stockinette, so I'm still having a good time. This is, like I said, the front panel. I did some shaping here along the sides, as you can see, for the armhole. I want it to be pretty straight up, and then I don't know how this execution is gonna go, but I saw this really cute like boat neck tank top and I kind of want that similar shape. So I'm hoping the straps kind of hit far over to the side, and then I want like a really wide neckline. Now I have kind of stopped working on this project for the last couple of days because that is actually really stressing me out. That has been the biggest difficulty working a lace pattern. Is obviously I start out with a set number of stitches. I believe this one told me to do a multiple of 8 plus 5, something like that. But essentially at the end of the day, you have to have a certain amount to make the pattern be placed correctly. And so I'm kind of stuck at where I want to cast off for the neckline. You know, normally if I'm looking at this t-shirt, I would just knit across and then cast off like in a straight line and then knit up one side and knit up the other, and it would be fine, you know, just doing decreases as I go. The difficulty is that I have to do this decrease to equal a certain amount of leaves, essentially. Each leaf is that multiple of 8. And then I have to continue doing that all the way up. So that's also part of the reason that I decided to do a boat neck, because I figured it'd be like one really big stretch of decreases and then a couple small ones, and then like you're onto the straps. So I don't know how it's gonna go. I've kind of paused because I'm a little worried about it, because I am like, I think about right here. Maybe a little bit further up, maybe about right there. I gotta feel where like my armpit section is supposed to go. Yeah, I think about right here. So yeah, about when I need to start casting off to make a boat neck. So I've paused a little bit. It's just making me nervous. I feel like I'm gonna ruin it. So we shall see. I'm gonna have this front portion done in my next video. There's my promise. But with that, that's pretty much all the projects I've been working on. I've got a couple others that are sort of in like a hiatus right now because I've just like maybe lost motivation to work on them. Like I said, I'm mostly just feeling really into my summer projects right now, or my really challenging projects for some reason. And that's just what I've been focusing on. I don't know. It's my artistic, creative mind. It just does whatever it wants. I don't know. I don't have a good explanation, I guess. But I do have a couple acquisitions. So I've mentioned before, and you can see with your eyes, I have a lot of yarn. And I definitely, you know, in the last 2 or 3 years was more in a headspace of like collecting than I was using. And I hear people say, and I will wholeheartedly agree, collecting yarn and knitting or crocheting or using the yarn are 2 totally different hobbies. And that is so, so, so true. So I have been trying to make a point to just use what I have. And I actually went through a couple weeks ago and got rid of a few skeins, did a little bit of destash, just stuff I've gotten, you know, over time, maybe secondhand, maybe somebody gave me, maybe it's just stuff I don't like anymore, like the color. So I've gotten rid of a couple. I've been knitting a lot this year, and it's been moderately successful, but I don't think that I'm at like even a break-even point just for the year. So that's not great, but I'm trying to be more conscious about it. And there's definitely been a number of times that I have really wanted to purchase something and I've said no. So if I kept track of all those, like I'm way ahead of the curve here. So if those count, then we're doing fantastically. But I do have a couple acquisitions I have to talk about. Sewrella Yarns. Maybe you already know where I'm going with this. They had just a gorgeous summer collection that they just released. And it could have been a collection made for me because I love bright colors and I love flowers and I love just like summertime colors. And oh my gosh, even if you like are not interested, the yarn sale is totally over. It has been for weeks. But I recommend just going and looking at the pictures because whoever is photographing for that company, give them a raise. They looked so good. The backgrounds are these beautiful florals. The yarns just like pop. They look so good. And there was one color. I've actually had my eye out for this color for a long time. I've wanted like kind of a bright red. I really love red and I think it kind of contrasts with my skin tone really nicely. And I just thought like a bright red cardigan or maybe like kind of oversized jumper sweater would be really cute. I just haven't really found anything that I was like obsessed with. And they had a color called Strawberry Fields. And that's it. That was it. That was what I've been looking for. And I bought a sweater's quantity of it in their sport weight. And it will probably get here next month, sometime in August, based on their projections. And I am incredibly excited for it. One thing that I will say, I mentioned a couple videos ago that I had a vacation planned with my family to go to Maine. And if you're interested, I posted a vlog on my main channel about it, so you can go watch that. But I had mentioned how, you know, going to New England, their weather's a lot chillier in the winter, and I was kind of excited about looking for some yarn stores. However, I went with my husband's family. I'm the only person that knits, and we only had 2 vehicles. So it would either require everyone else cramming into one vehicle or us like detouring the entire group to go find yarn stores. So I didn't get any yarn. So I actually used the money I had saved up for Maine because I had expected to find some yarn. I used the money I saved up to buy the yarn from Sewrella. So I had been kind of planning this out ahead of time. It didn't work out exactly how I wanted, but I didn't even care because she was like releasing those when I was on vacation, and it made me feel better about not being able to find some local yarn because I was just enamored. They're so pretty. So I'm incredibly excited about that. And then I made another acquisition. This past week was my birthday, and I spent actually the day with my best friend, but my husband had a whole nother day planned that we spent together. It was really lovely and fantastic. And part of it involved going to a yarn store. It's like kind of local to us. It's like 45 minutes away, and I'd actually never been to it just because it's kind of that distance. It's like far enough that you kind of have to plan ahead. I just had never gotten around to going. So we stop at the store. It's really cute. And actually the lady that was running it that day said that they had this huge sale going on because the original owner of the store had passed away, and her stash was something they were selling as like half price, really cheap, just in bundles, like in big bags. So I was really excited to look through it, I gotta be honest. But there was a moment when I was looking through all of it that I was like, is this what happens to my yarn when I go? Like, is this just like the life cycle of a knitter that you buy from somebody else's stash after they pass away? You put it in your own stash, you use like a third of it, and then when you pass away, your stash gets donated to a local yarn store, and it all happens all over again. Like, I couldn't decide if it was like poetic or really morbid, but I kind of felt like this was prophetic for someday what will happen to my massive stash, because I just don't know if it's ever gonna get used through. There's so much pretty yarn in the world. Anyways, I bought some yarn from there, and actually my husband purchased it for me as like kind of an additional birthday present. So I was really excited, but I got all kind of like secondhand from this woman's yarn stash. She had some really lovely yarns, which actually they said they had them out for a while, and that this was what they had in the store, which was about, I don't even know, probably my entire stash was like a fifth of what they had to begin with, which, you know what? I'm not shaming her, because if I owned a yarn store, it would for sure be that big. And so I totally get it. I just couldn't believe I found so many pretty things when, like, obviously it has been so picked over already. So she had a really, really beautiful collection. But I found 3 different bags of stuff, and some of them were categorized in a way that made sense. Some of them were kind of random. But the first one, and this one only cost me $10, I got because look at that color. It is a single strand. It did not come with a label, but I would wager that it's probably just like a bulky single strand wool. I also think it's interesting and maybe a little sad. A lot of the bags had unfinished projects in them, which I don't know what this was gonna be, but it's like definitely a panel piece of something. And there's like some shaping you can see. So I wonder if it was maybe waist shaping? I'm not really sure. I don't know that I'll be able to salvage this panel, but I thought it was probably at least 2 skeins of whatever this yarn is. And I think this would be a really pretty vest. So that is the plan with this. It came with this gray yarn, which is like crazy fine. I would say just based on the hairiness, it's like maybe an alpaca, and it's a started project. I'm not sure what it was going, oh gosh, it's a little tangled. I'm not sure what it was, but it was like a lace work project. So it's really soft, but I'm not sure what I'll do with this. I don't knit with gray a lot, but it's really lovely. So we'll see. I mostly got it for the really bright greeny yellow, but that was $10 for all of that. I would say probably 3 skeins of yarn. And then the only thing that I got that wasn't in a grab bag, this is Cascade yarns. I've used before, you maybe used before. They're lovely, they're just a classic. These were on sale as well. For both of these, they're both 100 grams, it was only $11. I just thought they were really nice, pretty color. I feel like I can always pair green with anything, and they look fantastic. So I got them. And then this one I felt like was quite the find. This bag has 5 skeins in total. I'll get them out here. But it has 5 skeins of this Shibuya. I think that's how you say it. Yarn, and it is 41% cotton, 35% baby alpaca, and 24% merino wool. So it has got like a really nice fluffiness to it. I really love holding like this. It's a lace weight. I like holding this type of yarn with other strands because I just think it gives such a nice, you can see maybe it's really fuzzy, but it gives a nice fuzziness to anything you use it with. It feels really lovely. And like I said, 5 full skeins, so a sweater's quantity for $35. That's crazy. That's crazy. I wonder if these have prices on them. It does. Original price, $20. So I got the entire bag for like a skein and a half-ish price. Oh, I lied, I got 4 grab bags. This one, I went back and forth a little bit about. It was only $12.50 for the entire bag. And the one that I was most interested in, honestly, I was looking at this ahead of time. I made a pair of self-striping socks for my husband a couple months ago, and I just thought they were so fun that I've kind of been looking for yarn for myself, and it had this in it, which I think is so cute and would make really cute socks. And I had already been looking at this yarn in the store, and 1 skein of this was $20, and I got this entire bag for $12.50. So what a great deal. It also has a skein of this like emerald green, definitely fingering weight, probably a sock yarn. This skein of probably undyed. It's a little scratchier, but I would say it's probably still a wool. And then 2 skeins. These are both kind of bulky weight. I don't know what they are. None of them have labels, but they're nice, and I think they could probably be paired together really easily. So all that was $12 or $12.50. And then the actual last bag that I got, and this one's more what my husband picked out, but he likes socks. He likes the socks that I knit, and I really like making them for him. It's fun to know you're making socks for someone that really does like them. And there was a lot of sock yarn, so I was like, you know, look for one that maybe you would like. I was kind of holding them up and say, do you like any of these? And he picked this one out, and actually this one's kind of like a double whammy. So he said he really liked this one. It's got a lot of green and gray. It's just kind of toned down. He likes those colors a lot, which it's also a project. And this one kind of came with needles. So this is another like intricate lace work. Oh boy, it's a little tangly, but it's maybe like a shawl or something that was gonna have like a zigzag edge, but it's got a lot going on here. Definitely some complicated designs, but it's on needles still. I don't know if you can tell. It's like an interchangeable set of needles that there's covers on. So I don't know what brand it is, but I do have a set of like the Bamboo needle brand interchangeable needles, so I might see if this fits on there. So I might get some needles as well, or at least a cable. But it's this yarn. I would assume this is probably 100 grams just between the project and the skein. And then additionally in the bag there is this kind of blue gray, and it feels more like a DK weight, which I made a, oh, this one has a label in it. A lot of them did, honestly. She was a very organized lady. Some of them were labeled with how many grams were left too. This is, if it's superwash, it'll work for what I wanted. Ooh, 10% cashmere. It's not superwash, but I don't think that'll be massively detrimental. But Madeline-tosh hand-dyed yarns, and 80% wool, 10% cashmere, and 10% nylon, so that'll help. But essentially the plan is I made him a pair of socks out of, again, yarn that he picked out of. It was blue and gray, and I used the gray as the contrast color, and so I have like a good amount left of both of them, but I figured this is essentially the same weight. I think it's technically a worsted. It's fine, but I think I could use this with the leftovers of that and make him another pair. So kind of got 2 pairs of socks out of this. It also came with these 2 mystery skeins. I think they look like the same yarn. I would wager that they are probably a portion silk because they have like a significant sheen to them. Other than that, mystery, but I like especially the green color, I like a lot. So those are all my kind of grab bag yarns. It was really fun to look through. She definitely had a really amazing collection, so we spent a lot of time in that store. And I think that brings us to the end of today's podcast. If you're coming from my main channel and are interested in knitting content, make sure you subscribe to this channel because this is the only place from now on that I will be posting any sort of knitting or yarn content. If you are new to the channel in general, thanks so much for being here, and I hope to see you back again here sometime soon. Thanks for watching.